All right, so this chapter, what we're going to do is we're going to start to work on some of the detail of combining the road with the site, putting in some other retaining walls and whatnot here. So as you can see here, we've got the retaining wall put into this project. We're going to show you how to go about doing that here in this first video. And then we'll work towards the other side, and the other end we'll tie in down here. We're going to need a retaining wall through here because we're cutting into some rock. If we go back to our rock surface chapter, you'll see that we're tying in the rocks. We're going to put in a ditch over here with a rock wall, so we have different cuts and slopes. And then, we're going to, the next chapter, we'll work on a pond in this area here. So we want to start tweaking in, adding in some data here as well, to tie these pieces together. You can do this in any order. There's a lot of different methods that you can go about doing this. This is just one sample and one example. So what we'll do is I'm just going to start this project. So you can pick up from chapter 9. And when you pick up from chapter 9, there's a couple things that you'll want to do. And the first thing is to bring in the road network. Okay, so what I've done is I went back to the chapter where I did the road network, and I did that in a separate project. And we could have kept building on this project and kept working on this project, but what I did was just to keep it simple as I'm going through this, is to provide I exported out a VCL. So I'm going to import that VCL. Now before I import that VCL, there is a couple things I want to do. One is I want to come into my surfaces and I want to get rid of the original ground surface that's in this project. You can see that's going to change our slope daylight, which is fine because we're going to manipulate that anyways. And I'm going to bring in and import in the VCL file of my preliminary road. So when I do this, the reason I deleted the original ground was because the original ground exists in that other project, and so therefore I wanted to bring it back in. Okay, so what I can do here is it's also going to bring in this finished design, which is our preliminary one. We're going to delete that. We don't need that. We are then going to just we can rebuild the original ground, so we'll rebuild that surface because it shows is out of date. We can then, we want to also rebuild the finished ground, but before we rebuild the finished ground, we want to re-daylight this slope, this feature line. So we're going to go to our surface tab, and we're going to do our surface tie again, and we're just going to call this temp tie. Leave it on the break line layer, that's fine. We're going to tie to our original ground. We're going to daylight it to the outside. We'll put our 25-foot spacing. Our cut is a 1 and our fill is a 2. It's basically 2 to 1. And we'll add that to the finished design surface. Apply. Now when I rebuild this surface, it will account for that that object. Now we could have done this before or after, it doesn't really matter. So what we want to do, first of all, we're going to take our road corridor, and we're going to densify it. So I'm going to go to properties here. We'll scroll down and we will densify the surface. So it gives us a little bit better tessellation through there. Okay. Now we have this retaining wall, and based on some other preliminary design, this is where we're going to put the retaining wall. We could use the road corridor to put this retaining wall in so that it's part of this assembly. We're going to do it a little bit different approach. So what I'm going to do here is I'm going to take this feature line that I have. I'm going to go to my data prep tab, and I'm going to elevate that to the surface elevation. So not only am I going to take it to the surface elevation, but I also want to come up a foot higher than the surface elevation. So I'm going to do that, and my surface is going to be the finished design. So when I select apply, you can see that it's brought that feature line in. So now what I can do is close this. I'm going to take this feature line, or this top of wall line string, and I'm going to go back and I'm going to go to offset it. So I'm going to offset it, and we're going to call it, let's call it top back of wall, and we'll leave it on the break line layer. That's fine. We've got the line string selected. We're going to offset it 2 feet. We want to offset it to this side, so we're just going to put a 2-foot top here, and our vertical offset is going to be 0, so we'll apply that. So now we've got that. And now I'm going to offset it again, or this second line. We're going to call it top back of wall bottom. And we'll offset it only like a tenth. We'll just, actually, let's take it back just a little bit. Yeah, let's just go a tenth. We'll take it a tenth. Again, back to this side. The vertical offset is not really going to matter, so I'm going to hit apply. And I'm going to close. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to take this line here, and I'm actually going to send it back on data prep, back to the surface, which would be the finished design. All right, so now what I've done is just put it back on. So if we take a look here at this, we've put those lines, we've elevated it to the surface +1 over and then back down. So we could also, if we wanted to, surface tie it back over, but we know that that's tied over there at that point. So the next thing we're going to do, just to clean this up a little bit, is we're going to take this feature line that we have here that is our surface tie, now that we've got this elevated, and we're going to break it. Now I'm going to break it here at this point, and you can see what that does is it removes the surface tie for this side. I'm going to break it again at this point over here. I'm going to just kind of pick an arbitrary point right about in there. And then I'm going to surface tie this one back down. So I'm going to take this line here. We're going to surface tie it back. And I'm just going to call it east tie. The break line's fine. We're going to tie it to the original ground. The direction is to this side over here. Then we're going to do 25. We'll do a cut slope of 1 and a fill slope of 2. We'll add that. So now we've got that there. Okay. So now, because these lines are part, they're on that part of that finished ground surface, if I right click and rebuild the surface, what it does is it accounts for and picks up the break lines in this area. Now I'm also going to add in this one where I'm just going to add that to the surface. I could actually change the layer, which I think I'll do. I could just add it, but I'm going to go to the properties of it, and I'm going to put it on the same layer we have here for our break lines, and it'll change it to blue. And when I rebuild that surface, it now accounts for that part of the wall. So if I was to come in and do a surface slicer through here, I can see that I've got my wall and I got my bottom of the wall, and I'm projecting down. All right, now we don't worry about this right now, but we'll take care of that in a minute. So I can see what's going on there. So the next step would be we're going to modify our corridor here. So I'm going to go to my corridor and my main road, and I'm going to insert a template. So I'm just going to come in here. Well, one other thing I may want to do, or I'm going to have to do as well, is look at the properties here. Okay, so we're going to original ground, that's fine. We want to edit this, and we're going to have it reference the finished ground surface so we can see that, as well as we can add in this retaining wall. So we're going to add that in as well, just so we get a visual when we look at this. All right, so I'm going to apply, and we'll go ahead and close, and then I can come back over here, and what we're going to do is we're going to insert a corridor template. So we're going to insert that at the end of this wall, and that is going to be a copy of the main road. So I'm going to call this typical dash rewall for the retaining wall, and we're going to copy the main full road. So that just puts in a copy of it there. Going to rebuild. Alright, so we can see here we're referencing in our surface. We've got our other line work in there. As we roll ahead, we can see where we're tying into that surface. Okay, so then I'm going to insert another corridor template, at the end of the wall. So actually, let's just put it here at the PC. And this one's going to be a reference of the first one. So we're just referencing the first one. So any changes we make to the first one will be applied here. So basically, this is where we're going to stop our wall as we go through this. So next what we want to do is to edit this region in this template. So I'm going to right click over on that region, and we're going to edit. And we're going to edit the retaining wall in this area. Okay. So the first thing I'm going to do is go to my side slope for this side, and I'm actually just going to delete that instruction. And we're going to rebuild this ditch manually, just for this section. So I'm going to insert an instruction with an offset elevation, and we're going to choose the 0.5 as our starting point. We're going to offset a 2-foot ditch with a 0 difference in elevation, and we're going to call this ditch back slope. It's going to be the back slope of the ditch, hinge point basically, and we'll add that one. Then we're going to put in another one, which is an offset and slope from that point, and we're going to offset it 1 foot, and we're going to come up a 2-to-1 ratio for that side, and we're going to call this ditch back slope hinge, or actually this is going to be the bench, so we'll call it bench, and we'll add that. You can call it whatever you want, but just that's what we're gonna put a little bench in here as well. So now we have that. We're gonna add in another one from that bench point. We're gonna go over 5 feet at a 2% slope, and we'll call this bottom of retaining wall, and we'll add that. So we're just putting a little bit of a spot in here so that they can work on the retaining wall or whatever they need. And now you'll see, now that we've got the bottom of the retaining wall, if we look over here, you can see where it's tying in. I'm going to close this. What I'll do now is I'll take this surface and we are going to add it to the finished design surface. So I'm going to take this finished design surface, I'm going to add this surface, or this road surface, as a surface member. I'll add that, and we have to rebuild it. And as I rebuild it, you can see how it takes on now the retaining wall in that area. Now we do want to change the frequency that it's tessellating because it's using our surface. So we're going to go to project settings, and for our computation corridor, instead of 25, let's set this to 5. We'll click OK. It's going to rebuild that that corridor section. All right, and if we rebuild this, we'll get another look at this. So a little tighter. So now we got a better look. If we turn off the finished design surface, or the original ground surface, and the main road, you can see what we have now as a surface. Now we can come through here and do some more work to clean this up. So maybe we want a little bit of a transition in this spot. So what we're going to do next, if I turn back on the main road, is I'm going to come in and I'm going to add in another template. So I'm going to insert another corridor template. Let's say it's station 2 plus zeros, and this one would be actually, let's just move this one. Let's cancel this for a second. Let's do it this way. Let's take this one and we're going to go to properties, and I'm going to move that over to here. So it's going to take this one and it's going to push it out to there, which is fine as it rebuilds. Okay, so you can see now it's pushed it out. So now that we've pushed that out to station 2 plus zeros, what we can actually do is let's just go ahead and rebuild the surface and see what our results are. We'll get a better look at this. So now you can see as we look at this, okay, I've got my retaining wall and I've got this going out there. What I might want to do is just put another template in here and get rid of this, just this bench piece. So what I'm going to do is we'll go ahead and we'll insert another one. So we'll insert another corridor template, and we're going to begin that at the bottom of the wall. We're going to copy the retaining wall one. So we're just going to say transition. We'll copy the retaining wall, we'll insert that in, and what we'll do is we'll just delete that little bench piece. Alright, so now that we have that in there, we're going to come in and I'm just going to delete the bench. So if I delete that instruction, it takes it back to here. We'll close this. Okay. And the last thing you'll notice here, we've got different slopes. So I'm going to go back to my full typical and we'll edit this one. And we're going to change our slopes. Let's go ahead and make our cut 2:1 and our fill 2:1 for both sides of the road. So rebuild, do the same thing over here because we put a 2:1 on that back ditch. So we're going to match these slopes so that they're the same. Okay, so close that up. We'll rebuild that surface again. Okay, so now you can see we've got a little bit better detail. So now what we can do is we can add in some more break lines and feature lines. So if I was to come in under CAD and create another break line here and go from, let's say, this point here to this point here, okay, then maybe we're going to go, we'll create a new one, and I'm going to come up this wall here, we'll go to there, we'll pick a spot there, pick a spot there, and then maybe go over to this corner over here, and we'll bring it back down to there. So basically just creating this little piece in here to, when we rebuild the surface, it kind of creates a smoother transition in there that we have. So now what I could do is, extend this wall down. It all depends on what detail you want to do in this area, but you can see here we're getting that transition to come together. So that's how you could go about putting the retaining wall and start combining these. Again, eventually we're adding everything to the finished ground surface. So we'll work our way down and we'll do a couple other, we'll work on this area. What's going to happen in here is we're just going to put in a boundary and we're going to clip out these triangles. So as we build this, our goal is to add and keep adding to our finished design surface.